imagine that you have already established your life and you've chosen the direction that you want to go in. You've already decided you don't want to have children. You've already decided how you want your career to work, and you're enjoying everything. And then all of a sudden, someone that you meet has this magnetic, intense attraction to you that you kind of feel, but that he won't let go of. And so he just continues to pursue you in a way that builds you and your friends and your family up. You know, like, what would you do? Would you begin to consider your choices, or would you just continue to move forward in the direction that you were already going in and not let anything interrupt that? That's kind of what this story is. I loved how Kennedy Ryan actually gave this woman her own perspective, her own unshakable resolve about life, things that she just would not have ever considered saying yes to or no to, because she already made up her mind. But what I love about this story is also the parallel. Maverick ends up being this character that also has done kind of the same thing in his life. He's lived his life a certain way already. He's already made a certain amount of money. He's already had a certain amount of relationships. And, you know, he's decided what he wants and what he doesn't want in his life. And they're both just kind of like moving forward in their own direction until their paths meet, which is crazy about the parallel, because parallels don't normally intersect, right? But in this story, the two things that intersect are these two people, but everything about them becomes kind of like a yin and a yang, or the thing that he's dealing with, she's dealing with in another way, or something that he's already experienced, she is experiencing. And I didn't know how much I was going to appreciate that about this story until it was finished. The thing about this book is it really solidified to me why I love Kennedy Ryan's writing. Now, there are things about it, there are small things that aggravated me while I read the book, which we'll get into. But when I sat back and I thought about exactly what she did in this book, it just reminded me as to why I keep buying and reading her books, because she really is a great writer. She causes me to really think about not just what's happening in my life, but to also consider other positions and other choices. And not only that, but she kind of wraps this realistic conversation, right, about reality. She wraps it in a love story. And it's not a cheesy love story. It's not a cookie cutter love story. It does have particular tropes, they all do, but it's done in such a way that, for me, I almost forget that there is a way that this is supposed to end up, right? She also really shows that she's a great writer because she doesn't just have the main plot. I wondered while I was reading this book, was she preparing me for another book? Because when I read Before I Let Go, I didn't think that I was going to be preparing for This Could Be Us. And then I should have known that there was going to be a third story, because those were the two friends. And then shortly after, I learned when I was reading This Could Be Us that she was preparing us for Can't Get Enough. And so even as I was reading Can't Get Enough, I was like, is there more to this? While I read This Could Be Us, I literally reached out to Kennedy online and was like, hey, I wish you would tell such and such a story. None of these are the stories that I asked for, but I literally asked her for another character story because of the subplots that she puts in, how much detail she gives us in the character development. And it's one of the reasons why I like big books, but those big books are normally about 1,000 pages long before the author is able to really draw me in and do what she does in about a 300 or 400 page book, which again solidifies that she's a great writer. She's a really great author. Kennedy has given us these two characters. that deal with real world situations. They deal with, real problems. They have real successes, and it's not something that we can't fathom or that we can't imagine, because it is very much real. She even talks about in the beginning of the book how there were certain things that she dealt with before she started writing this book. And then at the end of the book, she also had certain things that happen at the end. Kennedy Ryan gives us these two characters with this realistic experience. When I first started reading it, it was no different than when I first started reading Before I Let Go. And I'm looking over because that's where my hardcover book for Before I Let Go is, but my softcover Kennedy Ryan books are over here. So when I first started reading Before I Let Go, I had to pause. And the reason why was because there were parts of me that I did not want to deal with some of the things that I knew I was going to deal with when I read that book. And it was the same thing when I was reading this one. It's not like I got to get my mind right because of all the horrible things that are going to happen. It's just that emotionally, it is not light and fluffy. It's not one of the just straight comfy books. You do get comfortable in the story, but this book is emotionally um it is a little bit heavy, okay? And the reason why is because it deals with grief and loss, and it deals with aging parents and personal struggles, choices that we have to make when it comes to these things. And there were times where I cried, right? There were times where I had to put the book down because I wasn't quite ready to process some of the emotions that came with reading this book. But it is also one of the reasons why I enjoyed it. It just took me a minute. And sometimes that's what happens when I'm reading. As you'll learn as we keep on going, if you watched one of my other videos or you listen to my podcast on my reading experience and my reading choices, sometimes I put a book down, and some people would consider like that to be DNFing. But for me, I'm not exactly DNFing a book per se. I'm just kind of saying like, I'm not ready for this right now, or I'm not interested in this right now. And for this book, it was, I just wasn't ready to do all of that work when I started this book back in May of 2025. And so now here we are in February 2026, and literally, I think I picked up the book officially again in probably November or December, and then I put it down again, and I kept picking it up and coming back to it because I wanted to finish it. I wanted to know what happened with the characters. I wanted to understand their story, and I just knew that I needed some time to kind of work through the things that were happening in the book.